peace and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Amen.
And just before we begin, just a couple of things I wish to just deal with. First of all, I am in possession of 2 letters from His Excellency, the Governor General, one dated the 14th of March, in which he advises the clerk of the resignation tendered by Mr. Damian Crawford, which resignation took effect on the 14th day of March 2019. And the second letter from His Excellency, dated the 20th of March, notifies the clerk of the resignation of Mr. Royal Reed, CD, resignation taking effect on the 20th day of March 2019. So the record of the Senate will reflect those 2 resignations accordingly. Senator, Madam Clerk.
President?
Yes.
Just on a point of information, did either letter or both give any reason for the resignation?
In relation to Senator Crawford, His Excellency's correspondence reads as follows. I write to advise that Mr. Damian Crawford has tendered his resignation as a member of the Senate with effect from the March 14th, 2019. I have accepted the resignation effective March 14th, 2019. In relation to Mr. Reed, I write to advise that Mr. Royal Reed, CD, has tendered his resignation as a member of the Senate with effect March 20, 2019. I have accepted his resignation effective March 20, 2019. Sincerely, Governor General.
Thank you, President.
Mr. President, something seems strange. I've seen in the public domain a letter from former senator, in light of what you have said, dated the 22nd of March, today, to the Prime Minister. So it seems to me that if he resigned from the Senate on the 20th, how can it be that his resignation as a minister takes effect 2 days after? Either he didn't understand it, that his resignation ought to take effect from the same date as the letter, but there's some confusion. Is he still a minister up to today or up to last night while he has resigned from the Senate? I just want to be clear, because the public need this clarity.
I can indicate to you from my point, or from my position here, the situation as it relates to the Senate, and I've read accordingly the correspondence to the clerk from His Excellency, the Governor General, as to the particular circumstances or the letter that triggered it. I wouldn't be privy to that. Well, let me finish now,
I
please.
thought you were.
Hang on. The clerk has referred me to section 137 of the Constitution, but that relates to resignations from cabinet, etc. That's not my concern here. My concern really relates to the question of his resignation from the Senate.
I know, and you're quite correct, Mr. President, about the resignation from the Senate. It is that gap since the Prime Minister would have received the letter from Minister Reid, and as he requested, but that letter I have seen, it's on my phone here, dated the 22nd. So it seems to me that it's a chaka-chaka arrangement, a lack of coordination. But how can somebody who is not a senator even continue? Because it might come to the question of payment. Is he paid up until the 22nd of March as a minister? Or is he paid up until the 20th when he resigned? There is a conflict there that I think need to be explained.
Senator Brown, you understand my position, though? You're asking me about something that is not within my purview as President of the Senate, you know.
Mr. President, I understand you to be saying it's above your pay grade, and I accept that. I take it. But I hope that the Prime Minister will explain to the country that the resignation as minister cannot survive beyond the resignation of a senator.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Your point is noted.
President, on an occasion like this, it is customary to be brief, but to pay a tribute to those who were once with us and now not with us.
Could I just ask you to let me run through some other housekeeping matters, and then I'll recognize you.
Thank you.
Okay. I just asked the House, asked the Senate to recognize the return of Senator Slowly, who was on a few months' leave, seeing about some personal issues. I asked the Senate also to recognize the fact that Senator Fraser Binns is absent, she having delivered herself of a bouncing baby boy named Jonathan. And you'd have noticed quite a few visitors today. Some young men from Wolmer's Boys School. Will you just indicate where you are? Wolmer's Boys School. You realize that there is a past student of Wolmer's Boys School here. And there is a 45 students from Wolmer's and 2 teachers. Where are the teachers? Beautiful, welcome. And there are 17 students and 2 teachers from the Stewarttown Primary and Infant School, which is in Trelawney. And those kids are where? Oh. And special guests of myself, because the clerk and a number of members of the staff of the Parliament visited the Denhamtown Primary School on Commonwealth Day. And as a result of our visit there, we invited today 80 students from the Denhamtown Primary Schools. Wave, kids. And I'm just going to ask Miss Eugenia Brown, who is the principal, to stand, and Miss Cordell Daly, who is the vice principal. Miss Daly, who is the vice principal. And I'm going to ask the Senate to recognize Mr. Sheldona Miller, and Miss Dejive Reed, who are the head boy and head girl. Where are you? Yes. I must tell you, we had a very lovely visit. Thank you for hosting us, and for all the members of all the students and the teachers who have come here this morning. Welcome to the Parliament, and stay as long as you wish. Remember, this is your Parliament, and you're always welcome to come and participate by observing the processes of the Senate. You're always welcome here. And to the kids who are from Trelawney, make sure that when you're going over, you drive carefully. So welcome again to the Senate. Senator Knight.
Thank you, President. I want to just say a couple of words in relation to Senator Damien Crawford. He went to Casey, I think. What's it? Fortis, cadere, cedere, non potest. The brave may fall, but never yield. But in his tenure here in the Senate, he the more so adopted the motto, age quod agis. Whatever you do, do to the best of your ability. And that is how Senator Crawford performed as he participated in debates in this honorable chamber. He was indeed an honorable senator, and honorable persons ought to be recognized. He has resigned, as is public knowledge, to participate in a by-election in Portland, Eastern Portland, and his ambition in that regard is to become a member of the lower house, another honorable chamber in this parliament. And I have no doubt in my mind that he will succeed. And when he succeeds, I also have no doubt in my mind that when he becomes a member of that chamber, he will behave honorably. So honorably has he left, and honorably will he enter the other chamber. On this side, certainly, we wish him well in the endeavor on which he has embarked. And I would not be surprised if when someone on the other side rises to make remarks about the other senator, that they may not wish Senator Crawford to be successful in this endeavor. I would understand. I hope that if there are others in this chamber who want to enter the other chamber, that their behavior in this chamber will be of such a nature that the entire society will rise up and say indeed that this was a gentleman, that this person was a role model, and that today these youngsters who are all assembled in this chamber, one of the things they should leave with is that persons who are in this chamber are honorable persons. And so if they ever entertain the ambition of becoming a member of the Honorable Senate of Jamaica, they will know that from this stage where you are now to the stage where you will reach when you get here, you must always be in the pursuit of honesty. And that when you enter this chamber, you must be a person whose integrity can be held high. And never ever should it be that you enter ostensibly as an honorable person and you leave dishonorably. So I entreat you, please have the ambition to become a representative of our people of Jamaica and to let them hold their heads high when you sit in this chamber as their representative, as Senator Damian Crawford has done. Thank you.
Well, it might surprise you to know that I would wish Senator Crawford well, but no, I wish him success, but success is relative. Senator Charles, you have permission to speak from a seat other than your own for this and for the purposes of your presentation later.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. As you said, I was just about to say to our colleague that we on this side certainly wish Senator Crawford all the best. And the circumstances upon which both senators are not here today may very well be short-term. And I don't want to be premature in my permanent best regards for their departure. But I will say that both Senator Crawford and Senator Reid have served with distinction, and in this position that we have, the very noble position of serving at this high level as senators, it is a responsibility, Senator Knight, of which I agree that every single young child here should look on us as role models. In that regard, we certainly do wish the best of both senators. And somehow I get the feeling, the inclination, that we may very well be welcoming them back very soon to this Senate. Both. That's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. I want to.
He's Jewish.
That said, I would like, Mr. President, to, without more, wish on behalf of the senators on this side all the best to both and best respect for the service that they have given to this Senate, to this Honorable Senate, and to the nation.
Thank you. Statements by ministers. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the Senate today are the following. Minister paper numbers 11 and 12, Cabinet agenda issues dated December 3, 2018 and December 10, 2018. Minister paper number 13 entitled Revenue Measures for the Financial Year 2019-2020. Minister paper number 14, Instrument adopted at the Annual Labour Conference of the International Labour Organization for the year 2018. Minister papers numbers 15 through 18 entitled Cabinet Agenda Issues dated January 14 and 23 and February 4 and 11, 2019. Annual Report of the Jamaica Business Development Corporation for the year 2016-2017. Auditor General's Report on the examination of the fiscal policy paper for the year 2019-2020. Auditor General's Performance Audit Report on the management of the Special Early Retirement Program, SERP. The Bank of Jamaica Annual Report and Statement of Account for the year ended December 31, 2018. Annual Report of the Jamaica National Agency for Accreditation, JANAC, for the year 2017-2018. Revised medium-term profile to the fiscal policy paper for the year 2019-2020. Annual Report of the Development Bank of Jamaica Limited for the year ended March 31, 2018. The Foreign Nationals and Commonwealth Citizens Employment Work Permit Fees Amendment Regulations 2019. Annual reports and audited financial statements of the Independent Spark Limited, IPL, for the years 2012, 2013, and 2013-2014. Jamaica Third Supplementary Estimates 2018-2019.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Two issues arising. One, the normal list that would be provided to senators. I haven't seen it here, and I'd urge that it be provided to us of the announcements. That's the first. Second thing, Mr. President, is again I listened keenly to the announcement, and I have not heard table the report from the Integrity Commission on the sale of UDC lands. It's 2 years. I've asked for it over and over, and I've asked the parliamentary authorities to impress upon the Integrity Commission, because I know the report is finished. I know the report is finished. Why has it not been provided to the parliament so we can see whether Jamaica got value for money? And as a senator, I'm entitled to the product of the commissions of parliament. And the National Integrity Commission is a commission of parliament charged with doing an investigation and to report back to the parliament. Again, Mr. President, has this report been given to the parliament?
Senator Brown, first of all, I recognize you from a different seat. No problem. But my understanding is that were it provided to the parliament, it would be tabled forthwith. But I've listened to you before in relation to this matter, and I assure you that it has not been tabled. It has not been presented to the parliament for tabling.
Mr. President, having asked this, have any effort been made by the parliament to ask the Integrity Commission what is the status of this report? Because as a senator appointed, and I have not given the Governor General my letter yet, and I don't intend to do one soon, is we are entitled to these things. The Auditor General makes report, and we hear the Auditor General not audit. We can't be paying money to the contractor, to the Integrity Commission, but they're not producing the work, and they're silent on it. So I want to know, as a parliament, written to them, because as a senator, I have made this request over and over, and I'm asking that a letter be sent forthwith to the Integrity Commission, just as they demand that we submit reports by the 31st of March. and it's quite legitimate because that's what the law requires. And if we don't do it, they send us to DPP and elsewhere. Why can't they provide us with this report? What is there in the report that is holding it up? I know the report is ready. It's ready and ought to be on its way to the Parliament if it is not yet here. And I'm demanding as a member of the Senate that I be given a copy of the report forthwith.
Senator Brown, let me tell you what I'm going to do. I will ask the clerk to get a copy of the Hansard with relation to your submission today and have her forwarded to the Integrity Commission.
Much obliged, Mr. President.
Thank you. Bills brought from the Honorable House of Representatives.
The following is a message from the Speaker of the House of Representatives to the Honourable Senate. I have the honour to advise the Honourable Senate that on the 20th day of March 2019, a bill entitled An Act to Apply a Sum out of the Consolidated Fund to the service of the year ending on the 31st day of March 2020 and to appropriate the sums granted in this session of Parliament was passed in the House of Representatives without amendment. Signed, Pernell P. Charles, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Mr. President, I signify my willingness to take charge of the bill.
Petitions? Sorry, Madam Clerk.
A bill shortly entitled the Appropriation Act 2019 read a first time.
Mr. President, I beg to give notice of second reading of the bill. Mr. President, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take second reading of the bill and also to take it through all its concluding stages.
Thank you, Senator Charles. Petitions, papers, reports from committees. Just give me a minute, please. Sorry, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally.
Mr. President, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the Senate, I will move the following motions. Whereas the House of Representatives have adopted certain changes in the practices and procedures in that House, and whereas it is desirable that the Senate adopt certain of the new practices and procedures now in use in the House of Representatives, be it resolved that a comprehensive review of the standing orders of the Senate be undertaken, and be it further resolved that this motion be referred to the Standing Orders Committee for consideration and report. Be it resolved that this Honourable Senate appoint a special select committee comprising the following members: Senator the Honourable Pernell Charles Jr., Senator Carencio Morrison, Senator Wentworth Skeffrey, to sit jointly with a similar committee appointed by the House of Representatives to consider and to report on the bill shortly entitled the Local Governance Amendment Act 2016. Be it resolved that the Foreign Nationals and Commonwealth Citizens Employment Work Permit Fees Amendment Regulations 2019 under the Foreign Nationals and Commonwealth Citizens Employment Act, which were laid on the table of the Senate on the 22nd of March 2019, be referred to the Regulations Committee of the Senate for consideration and report. Mr. President, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take these motions.
Thank you, Minister Charles. Questions and answers to questions. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to the sitting of the Senate. Motions for leave to introduce bills. The presentation of bills without the leave of the Senate first obtained. Public business.
Mr. President, before public business, I seek your leave and that of the members of the Senate for me to withdraw the resolution regarding to the pensions, superannuation funds, and retirement schemes investment amendment regulations 2019 at item number 1 under government business on the order paper, as was done in the other house.
The question is, as requested by the minister, is this the wish of the Senate? Yes. In favor? The resolution is withdrawn.
Mr. President, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motions, notice of which I gave earlier.
Those in favor? Against?
Mr. President, I ask that the motions be approved.
The question is that the motions moved by the minister earlier be approved. Those in favor? Against?
Mr. President, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take second reading of the bill, notice of which I gave earlier, and also for me to take it through all its concluding stages.
Reference is being made to the Appropriations Act 2019. Those in favor? Aye. Against?
Mr. President, it is with honor that I stand to present the bill entitled An Act to Apply a Sum out of the Consolidated Fund to the Service of the Year ending on the 31st day of March 2020 and to appropriate the sums granted in this session of Parliament, for short, the Appropriations Bill 2019. Mr. President, before this Honorable Senate today is what can only be described as a historic budget. A budget for every single Jamaican, regardless of their status or income bracket. This budget is a reflection of the positive strides that we have made, and though we still have much to do as a nation, we are certainly taking control of our future. Mr. President, we are involving and engaging all of our citizens to the extent that we have even a citizen's guide that has been prepared by the Ministry of Finance and Public Service for all to understand the budget, breaking down the raft of measures that will impact you in your daily life. Mr. President, this is the emergence of a new Jamaica. Mr. President, as our nation is experiencing the best economic life in recent times, we must start by commending the staff, the ministries, the minister, the administration, and most definitely and importantly, our Jamaican people for their, all of whom have contributed to and sacrificed for the benefit of our future generations. Mr. President, this budget is a culmination of the competence, the confidence, and the compassion of this administration. It is clear that this administration, led by the Most Honorable Michael Andrew, the Most Honorable Prime Minister, Andrew Holness, is capable and willing to take the bold, creative actions required for this country to take control of its future and maximize its potential. We have listened, we have incorporated, we have embraced, we have respected the commentary, the review, and the recommendations of the opposition, of the civil society groups, of all agencies and bodies that impact and are impacted by this budget. And Mr. President, it is clear that we are committed to the principles of fiscal discipline that will continue to stimulate our growth as a nation. Led by our Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance, Mr. President, we are creating greater societal equity, not only for us here in this room, but for all Jamaicans, especially our children. Mr. President, it is opportunity for all. We will work to leave Jamaica in a better position than we received it. We will learn from our mistakes, face our challenges, craft and implement strategies to maintain the path of economic independence so that we can all grow together with equity. Mr. President, as we grow, we recognize our role within the global economic and financial system, the partnership supporting our efforts, and the benefit from even external financial flows, technology, and know-how. However, make no mistake, it is our economic independence that is our ultimate goal. In that other place 2 weeks ago, the Minister of Finance and the Public Service articulated a number of strategies that are utilized to fuel our path towards economic independence. One, the modernization and strengthening of the Bank of Jamaica through amendments to the BOJ Act, with one goal being a low, stable, and predictable inflation. And I'm sure, Mr. President, that we have all seen the internationally successful campaigns from the BOJ, which again goes to show that even our central bank can lead the way. Another, Mr. President, is the strengthening of our fiscal responsibility framework with the establishment of a fiscal council, as well as developing an institutional response to the financial risk of natural disaster. The Ministry of Finance, Mr. President, is commencing the policy process for a public financial management policy for natural disaster risk, which it intends to submit to Cabinet, and if approved, that will be laid in the Parliament. Mr. President, all of this is very important for an island nation like ourselves, particularly where natural disasters result in unplanned public expenditure or the reallocation of already committed financial resources for reconstruction, rehabilitation, and repair. Mr. President, before proceeding to outline the central government expenditure budget, permit me to highlight some of Jamaica's recent achievements which show that we are moving in the right direction. Mr. President, Jamaica, we have had low, stable inflation for 4 years, and the lowest inflation rates as an independent country. This is the emergence of a new Jamaica. Mr. President, domestic interest rates are at levels never seen before in Jamaica. The central bank has lowered the policy rate 4 times this fiscal year to a record low of 1.5% in February 2019. Market interest rates for individuals and businesses have never been lower, which means that many individuals and businesses are now able to access single-digit interest rates on Jamaican dollar loans. These record low interest rates, Mr. President, are allowing individuals and Jamaican business to borrow so that they can accomplish their goals and their dreams. This is the emergence of a new Jamaica. Mr. President, Jamaica has enjoyed 15 consecutive quarters of economic growth. 15 consecutive quarters of economic growth. And based on the PIOJ forecast, that record is set to stretch to 16 consecutive quarters for the period ending 2018. Mr. President, this represents the longest unbroken period of quarterly growth in 21 years. This is the emergence of a new Jamaica. Mr. President, while the growth rate for the first half of the fiscal year of 2% and the growth rate forecasted for 2018-2019 by PIOJ still leaves room for improvement, this still must be acknowledged as representing the highest growth rate in Jamaica in 12 years. This is the emergence of a new Jamaica. Mr. President, Jamaica's credit rating has been upgraded by leading international rating agency Fitch to our highest rating in 10 years. Mr. President, another international credit rating agency, Standard & Poor's, revised the outlook on Jamaica's upward from stable to positive. This must be recognized as the world is recognizing our efforts. This is, Mr. President, the emergence of a new Jamaica. Mr. President, there are more persons employed in Jamaica today than ever before in the history of Jamaica. With female unemployment at its lowest ever. This is the emergence of the new Jamaica. Mr. President, the port of Kingston experienced a 7% growth in containers moved in calendar year 2018 over calendar year 2017. Housing starts are at the highest level as well in over 20 years. And tourism arrivals, Mr. President, are at record levels. Mr. President, the central government capital expenditure, including infrastructure, that we rely on for development, was at the highest level it has been in 12 years. Capital expenditure for 2018-2019 is 3 times what it was in 2014-2015, and twice as much as it was in 2015-2016. Mr. President, our foreign exchange reserves in the central bank are at the highest levels ever, and our reserve adequacy stands at 112%, which strengthens our ability to continue to trade globally. This must not be understated, Mr. President. We want Jamaica to understand this is what is going to position us to have competitive advantage. This is the emergence of a new Jamaica. At the end of this financial year, Mr. President, by March 31, Jamaica's debt to GDP ratio will fall to 96%, which will be the lowest level of debt in nearly 2 decades, and the first time below 100% over that period. This is the emergence of a new Jamaica. Mr. President, the growth, but you never stayed here. Mr. President, the growth, and we're fixing it up. Mr. President, the growth that Jamaica has experienced and that Senator Brown will benefit from and will continue to experience and continue to benefit from will engender confidence in so many sectors our investors and our international partners have taken notice, and this can only generate greater things in the future. Mr. President, everywhere I go across the world, people are asking about Jamaica. People want to know, how can I get involved in your stock market? How can I buy, and I won't call the name, but there's a particular company everybody asks me about. People want to know that Jamaica is doing well, because we are revered, we are loved. And finally, there is a feeling across the world that we are willing to take the bold action that is needed to keep us along a path towards economic independence. Jamaicans are seeing, feeling, and involved in the growth. And that growth will not be derailed. This is the emergence of the new Jamaica. Mr. President, an important aspect of Jamaica's outlook for the upcoming financial year is our policy priorities, including public procurement reform, pension reform, both private and government, as well as public sector reform. And those have been adequately articulated by our minister in the budget debate in that other house. Mr. President, for the financial year 2017-2018, the central government was programmed to spend a total of $835.9 billion, of which $803.2 billion was funded from the consolidated fund and 32.7 from the appropriations in aid. Mr. President, we report that $803.2 billion will be funded from the consolidated fund, which comprises non-debt expenditure and public debt service. Mr. President, approximately $210.4 billion of recurrent expenditures will go towards compensation of central government employees. An amount allocated for compensation includes the increases that have been agreed with public sector unions, and the remaining amount will go towards funding recurrent programs. That includes, Mr. President, $2.7 billion to the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation to meet expenses associated with island-wide disaster mitigation and various road improvement programs, as well as $339.9 million to support planning and other pre-investment activities associated with 3 major investment projects being coordinated by the urban development construction of the new Parliament building, establishment of the government oval at National Heroes Park, and the development of Port Royal. Mr. President, the 2019 to 2020 capital budget of the central government is $72.1 billion. And this, Mr. President, reflects a 5% increase over the previous year revised estimates, and which more than doubles the capital expenditure levels inherited by this administration. Now, Mr. President, permit me to provide some details on how the capital expenditure budget has been allocated. Of great importance to our nation is our national security. And national security, Mr. President, will see a $20.2 billion allocation, or a 28% of the total capital expenditure. This, Mr. President, means that it is receiving the largest share of the capital budget, representing an increase of $7.5 billion, or 61% over the 2018-2019 revised estimates. Mr. President, this, again, must be very clearly stated to Jamaica as being reflective of the priority of the government and the priority that this government places on improving the security for the citizens of Jamaica. Mr. President, the allocation, which will facilitate implementation of new and ongoing projects, under Plan Secure Jamaica includes improving the JDF barracks in central Jamaica and establishing barracks in the west. It includes continuing the acquisition of general and specialized equipment, including coastal surveillance, telecommunications, and cybersecurity equipment, as well as aircrafts and ships for security forces, and the acquiring of patrol and other security vehicles, including approximately 1,000 motor vehicles for the police to improve their mobility. Facilitation of the renovation of police stations island-wide, including police stations in Savannah Lamar, Spanish Town, where we will commence construction also, Mr. President, on the autopsy suite in Kingston, as well as improvements to the correctional facilities. Mr. President, the second largest allocation of $18.4 billion from the capital budget will be towards facilitating major infrastructure works being implemented by the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. And a list of those have been articulated, which include, in brief, $4.8 billion to complete works along Mandela Highway, Constant Spring Road, Hagley Park Road, and the Ferris to Macfield Road in Westmoreland. $586 million to continue civil works on the Broad Gate to Vale Road section and achieve 100% completion during this year. $8.4 billion to facilitate land acquisition, design, supervision, and commencement of civil works along the southeastern road corridors and the Maypen to Williamsfield leg of the East-West Highway under the Southern Coastal Highway Improvement Project, and $950 million in total to commence major development works in Montego Bay, with $400 million of that going towards the rehabilitation of the groins in order to protect shoreline and marine ecosystems along the Montego Bay waterfront. Mr. President, and I think it is so critical, it's so important, and I want to, Senator Sinclair, I want to make it very clear, and I thank so much Senator Slowly for his confirmation that this government is dedicated to communicating its message as many times as we have to ensure that every single Jamaican is clear as to how we are using their money. 1 time, 2 times, 3 times in the newspaper. You're going to hear it everywhere. Matter of fact, if you check even the Prime Minister's Twitter, you will see all of it, because this is our responsibility, fiscal responsibility. Mr. President, I am happy to hear that even $1 billion of the $3.7 billion which is going to the Ministry of Health is earmarked to carry out rehabilitation on the Cornwall Regional Hospital. Mr. President, Mr. President, the government is using the capital budget to expand economic opportunity for all. Mr. President, we have a focus, as was articulated by our Prime Minister, on rural water, allocating $795 million to facilitate the implementation of projects by the Rural Water Supply Limited to upgrade the water supply across several parishes. Mr. President, we have a focus on agriculture growth and development. The continued performance of this sector is key to the improved growth outcomes, and therefore the allocations have been made, Mr. President, to continue the rehabilitation and the development expansion and rehabilitation also of irrigation infrastructure so that we continue to grow the sector. Mr. President, we have a focus on access to finance for the MSME sector. Mr. President, given the government's commitment to expand economic opportunity for all, we will be improving access to finance for micro, small, and medium enterprises by significantly increasing allocations for financing through DBJ and other intermediaries. Mr. President, it is a total of $1.8 billion that will be made available for loans to the sector. $1 billion through the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, of which $600 million is to provide loan guarantees through a credit enhancement fund to the MSMEs with limited or no access to the collateral required access loans. $400 million to finance the risk capital financing fund for these MSMEs. Mr. President, this is a four-fold increase from the $100 million in the previous financial year. Mr. President, $763 million will also be allocated through the Ministry of Finance and Public Service, 500 of which is specifically reserved for micro businesses, those businesses with sales that are less than $10 million, and $263 million as a line of credit between the Ministry of Finance and the Development Bank of Jamaica under the Foundations for Competitiveness and Growth project. Mr. President, we are also focused on what the Minister of Finance articulated as a sidecar fund. Mr. President, with the technical and financial support of the Inter-American Development Bank, the government expects to launch a sidecar fund facility that will provide $200 million in equity financing to the very early stage, scalable, and investment-ready startups by matching the support from identified angel investors on eligible ventures. Mr. President, we expect that this will be able to address the issues that hinder even several of our women in participation in tech scalable startups. Mr. President, we are focused further on the human capital development. And as a government, we intend to continue to invest in Jamaica's human capital by upgrading our schools, by providing funding for tertiary education through grant support of $3 billion to the Student Loan Bureau, by allocating $192 million to the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries to fund the new Global Service Skills Project, which is going to be coordinated by JAMPRO for the purpose of training and upskilling of Jamaicans who will be participating in the higher valued global services sector, and by providing funding for research and development. Mr. President, our students should hear that the government is focused on increasing the accessibility of tertiary education, as this is a promising means by which economic opportunity can be expanded. In the 2019-2020 budget, the government will provide grant support of $3 billion to the student loan, and I repeat that. Mr. President, in the past 3 years, the value of loans dispersed by the SLB has increased, and that has increased by over 22%. And in the 2017-2018 year, we note that 99% of those applicants were successful in their applications. Mr. President, let me quickly make reference as well to the sustainability of the revolving loan fund. Mr. President, in that regard, we will have the appointment of a new board to the SLB with a mandate to ensure that financing for tertiary education continues to be affordable and accessible, and that the revolving loan fund becomes sustainable. Mr. President, this new board is developing a strategy to achieve these objectives, including improving the SLB use of technology and its management of loan delinquencies. And there are several immediate reforms, Mr. President, in that regard, relating to the reduction from 9.5 to 7.5% for postgraduate loans, 6 to 4% on the pay-as-you-go loan, and effective immediately, Mr. President, our minister advised that eligible borrowers in good standing with SLB will be entitled to a reduction in their interest rates of 2 percentage points in keeping with the reduction in the BOJ policy rate. Mr. President, all borrowers employed full-time to registered charities which are in good standing will also have 10% of their loan balance forgiven for each full year that they are employed full-time to a registered charity. And this is important so that we can stimulate the activity in that regard. Mr. President, we move to the protection of the vulnerable. Mr. President, one of the most important aspects of this 2019-2020 budget is the government's commitment to strengthening social protection and to step up further social interventions to protect the poor and vulnerable. Mr. President, the budgetary allocations to PATH and school feeding in 2019-2020 is 72% higher than the budgetary allocation for these programs in 2015-2016. Mr. President, the government of Jamaica will be increasing the allocation across our portfolio of major social protection programs from 16 billion in 2018-2019 to 20 billion in 2019-2020, an increase of 25%, of which I'm sure every single senator here, regardless of which side they sit, will approve and congratulate. Mr. President, the allocations for the PATH program, as we said, has increased, including PATH conditional cash grants, PATH school feeding program, PATH examination support, while also the allocations are made towards PATH back to school grants and PATH transportation grants. As it relates, Mr. President, also to social housing, a new budgetary allocation of $1 billion has been made to the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation to support implementation of an island-wide social housing program across all 63 constituencies. A very important initiative, Mr. President, that will comprise 3 modalities: the provision of indigent housing, the relocation of vulnerable communities, and the upgrading of tenement yards. Mr. President, the government is increasing its allocation also to the Jamaica Integrated Community Development Project by 41%, or $627 million in this financial year. Mr. President, the government will spend a total of $2 billion on this project this year, and this is a project, Mr. President, that will contribute towards increasing community safety and violence prevention in 17 economically vulnerable and socially volatile communities, and enhancing also access to basic urban infrastructure and services, including sanitation, water, electricity, as well as youth development programs. Mr. President, the government, furthermore, is increasing its allocation to the poverty reduction program by 174%, or $349 million from 349 to $558 million in this financial year. Mr. President, this project is the 4th phase of a program supporting poverty reduction in Jamaica through grant funding from the European Union. And Mr. President, we must also acknowledge that the European Union has been a leader. It has been one of the largest providers of grants to Jamaica, and we thank them for their continued support in that regard. Mr. President, the government is also increasing its allocation to the Basic Needs Trust Fund. Again, Mr. President, this is moving from $163 million in the previous financial year to $573 million in the 2019-2020 financial year. Mr. President, this fund is financed by grant resources from the Caribbean Development Bank, and it seeks to improve access to quality education and human resource development in low-income and vulnerable communities. This includes upgrades to rural primary schools and support to the micro-community enterprises through 14 projects for the upcoming financial year. And this is in select communities across the country. Mr. President, I'll also make brief mention of the shelters for victims of domestic violence, which is critical, and to indicate, Mr. President, that the ministry responsible for gender affairs is being allocated $126 million to facilitate the establishment of 2 new centers for women who are victims of domestic violence. Mr. President, we mention also the allocation to the Citizen Security and Justice Program, which has been increased as well, $300 million, or 27% over the 2017-2018 financial year, for a total allocation of $1.4 billion for the upcoming financial year. Mr. President, I'll also refer to the codes of practice for effectiveness of the National Disabilities Act. And Mr. President, we know that the $25 million has been allocated in that regard to complete and to finalize 6 codes of practice and the attendant regulations on the National Disabilities Act, which was passed by the Parliament in October 2014, which is 4.5 years ago. But it has not been given an effective date due to the delays in completing the codes of practice. This, Mr. President, is essential and is an awesome move forward. Again, Mr. President, the initiatives identified reflect increases totaling approximately $4 billion in budgetary support towards the protection of the vulnerable in the financial year 2019-2020 across our portfolio of major social protection programs, from $16 billion in the previous year to $20 billion in this year, an increase of 25%. Mr. President, we have to mention as well government pensioners. Additionally, Mr. President, $600 million has been included in the 2019-2020 budget to increase pensions for retired government employees, which is in addition to the $600 million increase applied in the previous year. The majority of this increase, Mr. President, is allocated to persons who received the smallest pensions. Mr. President, additionally, the planned capital program for self-financed public bodies for the 2019-2020 financial year is projected at $71.9 billion, an increase of 23% over the $58.5 billion in the previous year. This means, Mr. President, that the combined central government and public bodies capital expenditure for 2019-2020 is programmed at a record $140 billion. Mr. President, 4 of the entities, namely the National Housing Trust, the National Water Commission, Petrojam Limited, and the Port Authority of Jamaica, account for 80% of the planned capital expenditure by public bodies. And just briefly, Mr. President, to note that the NHT will continue to pursue increased delivery of housing solutions. During the financial year, the trust plans 8,640 housing starts and completing 4,714. And to put that in context, Mr. President, what we're looking on here is an enormous step forward. The 8,640 housing starts for this year exceeds the total number of NHT housing starts for the entire period 2012, 2013, 2014, and 2015 combined. Mr. President, the steps that are being taken Mr. President, as Senator Brown says, referring to the foundation that is being laid, or that was laid, there are so many houses, so many structures in Jamaica that I see where the foundation was laid. Nothing else was done. They were abandoned and rotted. What we're doing, Mr. President, is building with a builder whose name is the Most Honorable Andrew Michael Holness, and with our Prime Minister. The NHT plans, Mr. President, to spend $39.4 billion on housing activities for the budget year. And I want to restate, so that all Jamaicans, especially our children, understand the kind of steps that are being taken to protect their future. The housing starts are essential for you to feel value, not only as individuals, but for you to be a part of the economic independence, not just as a nation, but as individuals and communities. Mr. President, the National Water Commission will also continue to pursue rehabilitation of the water and sewage infrastructure and to reduce non-revenue water and improve their service. And the NWC's planned expenditure is $7.2 billion. The Port Authority of Jamaica will also be spending $4.4 billion, and that will be to continue projects aimed at facilitating economic growth and development, as well as, Mr. President, the enhancement of security at the ports. Mr. President, the revenue measures, after almost 20 years of consistent tax increases and no new taxes last year, our Minister of Finance and Public Service was able to articulate that it is now time to give back. Mr. President, I was pleased as a young Jamaican to be able, in my existence, in my life, to witness a government that understands the need to remove itself and to allow growth to occur. Mr. President, by that, there is a need to phase out the distortionary taxes in a fiscally responsible way, where we are going to remain on the track to achieving our debt to GDP target of 60% by March 2026. And I note, Mr. President, that there are a raft of revenue measures that are being implemented effective April 1. Mr. President, this government will abolish the minimum business tax. This government will abolish the asset tax for non-financial businesses. This government will be moving the threshold for filing of GCT from 3 million to 10 million, which means that approximately 3,500 small businesses that currently file GCT returns will no longer be required to do so, though they retain the option to remain on the register if they so wish. Mr. President, the administration will abolish distortionary ad valorem stamp duties applicable to the processes of registering land, issuing a bond, assignments, registering a debenture, registering a mortgage, refinancing the mortgage, discharging, among other activities. And, Mr. President, we will abolish also the ad valorem stamp duty on properties. Mr. President, I believe, Mr. President, that it cannot be understated the impact of the removal of those taxes and reduction of those taxes, as well as the reduction of transfer tax on properties from 5 to 2%. The stimulation to the economy by allowing ordinary and all Jamaicans to have an opportunity to take risks that they would not otherwise take is an enormous move in the right direction. Mr. President, the government will also raise the exemption threshold on estate transfer tax from 100,000 to 10 million. And, Mr. President, again, the abolishment and lowering of all of these, what has been defined as distortionary transaction taxes, means that the government will forego approximately $14 billion. And this must be stated as the first time in my living memory, and perhaps in the memory of Senator Brown, which is about 3 times my living memory, that any government of Jamaica is giving back taxes on a net basis to the Jamaican people. And of that you will agree. Mr. President, this is how you stimulate growth. This is how you allow for the people to participate in their economic independence. Mr. President, as the Most Honorable Andrew Michael Holness, our Prime Minister, said earlier this week, there has never been a period in the history of Jamaica where the affairs of the country have been so managed that we can report 4 consecutive budgets which were either revenue neutral, no new taxes, or a reduction of taxes.
Mr. President, the Speaker's time having expired, I move that the time be extended to allow him to conclude his presentation.
Thank you, Senator Scott Murphy. The question is that the Speaker's time be extended to allow him to complete his presentation. Those in favor? Aye. Against?
I oblige and thank my colleague. It speaks so well for me to be referred as such a noble man. Thank you. If only you had a Nigel on your side. President. Mr. President, the Appropriation Act 2019 sets out the government's capital and recurrent expenditure, as we have just communicated, and without fear of contradiction, it is indeed a historic budget for the people of Jamaica. Mr. President, I want to close by just stating, as was said to me by a small farmer in Clarendon, no, not one called Joe, and another in St. Elizabeth. Mr. President, the new Jamaica is a Jamaica where all are engaged and where we have opportunity for all. Mr. President, this is not the Jamaica where we seek to take all of the credit. This has been a united effort. And as the diaspora has said to me, they're pleased to know that we're led by a Prime Minister and an administration that recognizes that we have challenges, recognizes the need to listen and to adjust where necessary, and to ensure, Mr. President, that at the forefront of everything that we do and every decision that is made is a protection and promotion of the interests of our people. Mr. President, imagine that in a few weeks, someone selling property in Mandeville for $15 million will save us $500,000 in transfer tax. Just imagine a Jamaica, Mr. President, in our lifetime, Senator Webby, where the farmer will be able to inherit and provide for his family because of the benefits given in this budget. Mr. President, this is the new Jamaica that all Jamaicans desire, regardless of affiliation, status, stage, or economic bracket. This is the Jamaica that we require. And it is on that basis, Mr. President, that we wholeheartedly commend this budget to all of my colleagues, senators, for their consideration and approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Charles. Senator Knight.
Thank you, President. Yeah. Oh, man. Can I just...
You have space?
Yeah, man. Thank you, President. I commend my colleague, Minister Charles, on his presentation. And there are some sentences he uttered which resonated with me. We have grown accustomed, of course, yearly, to say that this is the best budget ever. Whoever is the Minister of Finance, it's the best budget ever. And whoever is the Minister of Finance and the Prime Minister, the budget is always for the people. And it is always for the small man. But never have I heard in all my years, and thank the Lord they have been many, this kind of presentation about how wonderful this budget is. It's like the gambler. Don't count your money when you're at the table. Wait until the game is done. And the wonders of this budget will be known at the end of the year, the financial year. That's when we'll know. Because last year, we were told that this budget was going to help poor people to attain prosperity. But strangely enough, the budget directed at the poor has been increased because the number of poor people increased. Kind of strange there. That budget should be decreasing because poor people should be now earning, and poor people should now be able to take care of their own responsibilities without the government having to subsidize their housing, their food, their transport, everything. So I am going to await, the Lord willing, the end of the year before I join in the applause that has been punctuating the presentation made by Minister Charles. I saw persons there looking very happy, and expressing their happiness by the applause given. A sip. Let me tell you what I like. The emergence of a new Jamaica. Because this Jamaica we're living in now, it can't continue that way. It cannot continue that way. So I comment on that. I was impressed with the phrase, opportunity for all. I was. Opportunity for all, because that is what is needed. Opportunity for all. But the one that excited me most was when the minister said that the government is removing itself. Can't be too soon. Can't be too soon. This government has to go. It has to go. And it is going to go in one of two ways.
It's going to remove itself.
It's either going to remove itself or the people going to remove it. And I'm going to tell you why as I go along. My understanding, and I'm not an economist, though I did study some economics, but my discipline, my degree is in philosophy. And a part of the tradition is that those who engage in that like to think through things. And they like to move from an ethical foundation. That's what I understand. I understand that the budget is financed primarily from four sources. It's either grants, loans, taxes, or accretions from government owned property, and property in the widest sense. That's how I understand it. I understand that when there is funding derived from those four sources, that funding belongs to the people. The people. Because the people have to pay back the loans. The grants aren't given to politicians, they're given to the people. The property is owned by ministers, owned by the people, held by the accountant general or commissioner of lands, depending on what type of property it is, and so on, or by some board, some shareholders appointed by government. It's the people's money. And if anything flows from that, then that belongs to the people. And so, when that money is being used, it must be used to uplift the people, to uplift the country, and on behalf of the people of that country. But unless we have the emergence of a new Jamaica, we're not going to see that. Because people apparently who are put in some positions don't understand that fundamental. The people at Petrojam didn't understand that fundamental. Some of the people at Petrojam didn't understand it. I see where there is an allocation of somewhere in the region of about $107 billion to a ministry, a very important ministry. But it appears to me that the people, some of the people there don't understand that that $107 billion doesn't include $1 that they can extract from it and put it in their bank account or somebody else's bank account on their behalf. Unless there is the emergence of a new Jamaica, where it is understood that corruption is corrosive, where it is understood that corruption distorts plans, distorts the economy, then we're going to be in problems. We're going to be in problems. And I am not getting the feeling that there is an understanding of this critical issue. It is totally against the concept of good governance. Corruption is against good governance. So, in this emerging new Jamaica, it has to be understood. Those who are public officers, those who are politicians stroke public officers must take their sticky fingers off people's money. They come boasting about that which is available to a ministry to be expended for the people, expended on behalf of the people. And they believe that they can appropriate to themselves money which belongs to the people, either borrowed, given, collected, or earned on behalf of the people, for the people. They are embarrassing to the nation. They are embarrassing to politicians as a whole. All of us get a tar brush. Each one of us who is honest and honorable feels debased. Each one can only put the best outside. We feel let down. Especially when we find ourselves in a position in a budget debate where we have to be providing for the poor. And you have some people robbing from the poor. Really? To enrich themselves. It's not even like Robin Hood, you know. Robin Hood robbed from the rich to give to the poor. But these are robbing from the poor to enrich themselves. Shame. They must be made to understand. If you're in the public service as a civil servant, if you can't live off your income, get another job. Don't thief people money. If you are in the political arena and you have a ministerial post, live off of your earnings. Live off your income. Live off your income. If you can't live off your income, get out of the politics. Don't thief poor people money. I said it in this house before, in this Senate here, this chamber. I wanted us, let's see if we can work as a team, 21 of us, to see how we can deal with this corruption problem. Remember, Senator Webber, when I said it? Yes, we have to do it. That's how the new Jamaica is going to emerge. And then I said then too, and I repeat, that one of the things we do on both sides is I would say, oh no, they do it. And each time I hear it, I say that it is such a ridiculous position to take, because it is as if the justification is being given to behave this way because someone else behaved that way. It's not right. It don't make sense. A new Jamaica's Minister Charles will never emerge. If that happens, there has to be a cutoff point. There has to be cutoff. Henceforward, the thieving must stop. And I don't understand those who engage themselves in this kind of activity. Because, you know, perhaps it should have been more frequently done. But public servants, you know, civil servants have gone to prison for corrupt behavior in this country. They have. Ministers have gone to prison for corrupt behavior. They have. Ministers of state have found themselves in peril.
And at least 2 ministers of education before.
So why can't it be learned that crime does not pay? Why can't it be learned? I don't know. I grew up in a household where we always had a little plaque there, honesty is the best policy. Maybe every single politician, every single public servant should be given one of these plaques marked honesty is the best policy. And then have that where they can see it every single day. Why? I don't know.
I'm a woman to pay. Pocket every penny.
It's not that you can't live at a good standard. They're living at a good standard and living is good. But they don't want to live better by the sweat of the brow. They want to wait until we come to Parliament, pass the appropriation bill. They study to see what they can extract from it outside of the system. And then they pretend to be honorable persons.
You know, I'm going to stand on a point of order.
State the point, Senator Sinclair.
The last comment made by my friend that says that members come and study the appropriations bill and then seek to see what they can extract from it. It's casting motive.
I never said anything. They seem, the thieves. The thieves.
The persons who
I said
study.
they seem to study.
So I have stated my point of order.
That's what I said. They seem to do that. And I'm not withdrawing that. That's the appearance one gets from the behavior. I'm not casting any aspersions at anyone in here.
Senator Knight, Senator Sinclair speaks from great experience. Maybe we should just hear what he says, because he seems to be covering a long period of time.
I am covering a long period of time because this theft of public funds didn't start today.
Cleve Lewis, Jack Smith,
That's what I said. Ministers have gone to prison for it.
Malcolm.
And as you say, it has gone on for a long time. Yes, there are persons who are in Parliament who public bodies have said should never sit on a board. But they're sitting on board and have high office all throughout this society. We have at some stage, we have to become enraged.
Yes.
We have to. And decide that, look here, if we are going to be the sacrificial lambs, we are going to be the sacrificial lambs because we're going to put our heads, bodies, heart, and blood into this to stop it. It's a darn disgrace.
Man must go workhouse. Man must go prison.
You go down the road. See one of the politicians them there? You go up the hill. See one of the politicians them there? You go inside the party. See one of the politicians them there? Can't necessarily point a finger at you, But they hold you guilty by association. That's why, Minister Charles, There's a provision in the Gun Court Act where someone is guilty by association. I don't like it. I don't like it. And this one, I don't like. Let me tell you. I think I've used this before. Caesar's wife, like Caesar, must be beyond reproach. And we have to look at who Caesar was. Caesar was like us in here, you know, a politician, given certain responsibilities to govern, stroke, rule. Man, they say he must be beyond reproach. Because if Caesar is not beyond reproach, how can those persons to whom Caesar is speaking and to whom Caesar may be appealing can be beyond reproach? They can't. They won't. How can we sit in Parliament and pass anti-gang legislation dealing with scamming, where people extract from others through deceit monies that they are not entitled to? People out there say you have scammer in a parliament. Because they're going on the record of the past. President, record of the past. They're saying over time we have seen this. The enrichment through corrupt means. And they say it's them dear people go and sit down and pass law. Can you imagine if we had a corrupt judiciary? Thank God we don't. You understand the erosion of the democracy that would take place? We wouldn't be like a banana republic. We would be like a country without rules, morals, or a sense of decency. And so, whilst we pass, well, I don't know, pass the appropriations bill, because we can't pass no budget, we have to understand that there are some underlying ills that must be addressed if we are going to have the emergence of a new Jamaica. And if we are going to create opportunity for all. And if a government deserves to remain in place, or ought it to remove itself or be removed by the people? These are serious points, to me at least. But I'm an old man and I may be seen as simply musing. Can't work. There is an Achilles heel in the affairs of the state. And however those in control portray themselves, there is an Achilles heel. Now you all know the story of Achilles, a Greek warrior, a demigod, the son of Thetis, dipped in the waters, and only the heel was held while the child at birth was dipped in the waters. And so, as the myth is, the rest of the body could not be hurt, only in the heel. And the Achilles heel is this affinity, as it seems to be, for corrupt behavior. You know, the day must come, you know, when I soon gone. But the day must come when those sitting in this chamber and the one below must say, if the person to the right of me, or to the left of me, or behind me is not beyond reproach, I gone. And say, where you going? Say it. We have to start talk loud. Every one of us now has a responsibility to be a whistleblower. Yeah. We can't ask the society to be, but we hug up those who we would want the society to expose. We, each one of us, must be a whistleblower. And don't believe for one moment that anything I'm saying here today is because of any immediate circumstances. Neither should you believe that it is aimed in any particular direction. It's not. Because one hand can't clap. If one side is perfect and the other is not, then we have imperfection. That's what we have. Imperfection. So it is something that behoves each, notwithstanding any artificial coloration that we have. I'm not pleased. Minister Charles, no doubt that positive strides have been made, no doubt at all. As positive strides have always been made. And that each stride made by whichever side must be extended by strides made by the other side. Because one of the things that is necessary in the political arena is this concept of continuity, as Michael Manley had articulated in 1989. There were persons who were unhappy with him when he said so. But it's necessary. We have to build. There's a foundation. Somebody will build the foundation. Yes, and maybe Minister Charles.
Mr. President, the Speaker's time having expired, he asks that that time be extended sufficiently for the completion of his presentation.
The question is that the Speaker's time should be extended until completion. Those in favor? Those against, the ayes have it. Senator Knight.
Thank you. I won't abuse the privilege. Here, Minister Child, you will see some unfinished houses, you know. You will. But still, they can be. Don't not finish them because you didn't start it. Finish them. Because that is what governments are to do. Build upon the good things done by the predecessor. If this government in place now should change, and let's say this side becomes the government of the day and abandons everything that has been started by you, that can't be progress. That can't be. We will always be in a state of beginning and will never really reach a growth stage. So we have to keep building on what each other has done. And as I said, I'm not going to abuse. I get off my chest what really was bugging me. It's bugging me. And so I am now going to just end up. I'm not going to bother. I did write down a thing here about Plato and the Republic. Yes, the Republic. You know, because in building the Republic, Plato divided the state into three parts: reason, spirit, and appetite. And that represented the structure of the state. The philosopher king was at the top with the reason. Then you had spirit, which was really reflected through like the military and the police and so on. And the appetite would have been those less educated. But what he saw was the necessity of each and the importance of each. And so in the emerging new state, what has to happen is that there has to be a state of affairs where those who Plato would say represent appetite have self-esteem. They have to, because without self-esteem, they're not going to advance. And those with reason, the philosopher king, must build a state that accommodates and provides for all of those. It might be overly philosophical, but it guided my life. It guided my life and my thinking on how I try to operate in my imperfect way. In my imperfect way. But it helped. So I just want to pass that on. And lastly now, heroes. I'll go back to Greek literature and philosophy again. Every hero, the Greeks said, had what they called a tragic flaw, hamartia. And so we are in the political arena. Somehow, people out in the society see us as heroes. And if you look at it, every single hero that we have had some political base. Everyone. I can't think of one of our heroes that did have some political association. None. And each one had a tragic flaw. If we aspire to be heroes, we will too, if the Greeks are correct, have a tragic flaw. Let not that tragic flaw be that we were perceived to be, or in fact were, corrupt in our behavior. Let that not be our hamartia, our tragic flaw. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Knight. Senator Gale.
Mr. President, you know, I rise today to participate in this appropriations bill. And it's coming on the heels of what I consider in the other place some good budget presentations. I think the Minister of Finance made an excellent presentation supporting an excellent budget. Your colleague, Mark Golden, you know, the Senate is a learning ground. Nigel Clark learned in the Senate. Mark Golden learned in the Senate and made a very, very exciting presentation. The opposition leader made an interesting presentation, and he made some good points. And there are two of those points I want to address in my own presentation. The Prime Minister made, in my mind, a very overarching, excellent presentation, speaking on a wide range of issues. Minister Charles, I want to commend you. Katie, I don't want you to leave yet. Don't want you to leave yet. Yes. Minister Charles, you have made an excellent presentation also. Senator Knight, there are some things that you said in your presentation that I resonate with. I think as parliamentarians, we must stand up against corruption and crime. I want to also agree with you that we craft a budget, but we must evaluate the outcome of the budget at a particular point in time. And I believe that if we craft a budget, the experience must be made that it must be money well spent, value for money. I also want to suggest and agree, because as a country, if we are going to grow, if we see a foundation, we must not waste the foundation. We must build on the foundation. We must build on it. But I want to disagree with you with one thing, because you may have gotten your facts incorrect. Poverty went in 2015. It came down in 2016, and a statement made by PIOJ suggests that there is going to be further decline. I am putting it to you that under this administration, we intend for it to decline further. Jamaica has, yes, as usual. But you can go ahead and wait. I have a presentation to make. Yes. Oh. And no, I won't feel anyway.
So it won't be caffeinated.
It won't be coffee. I assume it's going to be wet. Mr. President, Jamaica has come a very long way. We have made sacrifices, and we have gone through a period of fiscal prudence. But it must be very important that that fiscal prudence and discipline must be maintained. The outcome of a budget of this nature, where we can promote growth and equity and sustainability, came out of sacrifice. And today I want to commend all public workers for the sacrifices they have made in supporting where we are. The minister made reference of the role of the private sector and the role of public servants and the trade unions in collaborating at different stages and different periods to ensure that we are where we are. Mr. President, the revenue measures for 2019-2020, as outlined in this document, must be commended. They are there to create greater business and economic activities, stimulate competition, promote economic growth, and, Mr. President, it is good for small and medium-term businesses because they need an opportunity to grow, to expand, and to be able to create more employment. Mr. President, the minister made mention of particular areas in his presentation that jumps out at me. Pension reform. The pension reform bill is very critical to broaden social protection by increasing also the percentage of workers that have access to pension. It's frightening the number of workers in this country that have access to pension. So few. It's frightening, and it's something that as a country we must address and deal with. Mr. President, these reforms must include things like addressing vesting, portability, dependent on the disability, those disabled employees. And one of the things that it must treat with is indexation. Mr. President, it is also important for us in the scheme of things to continue to promote the transformation of the public sector. Because we need a public sector that is so efficient, so effective, that supports and drives the needs of the private sector. And I welcome the trust that is being supported and pushed by this minister in that regard. Mr. President, there's a capital expenditure of some 72.1 billion. That reflects a 5% increase over the 18-19 period. And as I've indicated, it must be used wisely. It must be used effectively. There's a 192 million for the upskilling of the BPO. This is an industry that it's delicate, it's sensitive, But I support the upskilling of it. I support the training for us to be able to attract and to retain higher valued global services. Not just the business support service and the call center, but look at things like auditing, accounting, and other areas of higher, even technology, and supporting in those areas, Mr. President. So I welcome it. I also, Mr. President, welcome, albeit small, 200 million in research and development. It's a good area because any country that invests in research, that is where you can impact on a breakthrough in either scientific research or technological research. And so as a country, it's good that when we are investing, crafting an amount set aside for research. Mr. President, another key area that comes to my mind and dearly to my heart is social housing. Mr. Charles, you made mention of the 1 billion to relocate vulnerable communities. You have some communities that are under risk of disaster based on where they are. And, you know, we cannot see, while we can plan for these things, we don't know when they're coming. The upgrading of what we call tenement yards. And the key area is the indigent housing. That special attention, Mr. President, must be made. Now, I welcome the trust of the National Housing Trust. No pun intended. But that has been an organization and an institution that has done great for this country in building houses. The achievements include increased housing activities, infrastructural upgrades, and also government housing. And the housing start and completion, there is an expectation that the housing start of sub 6,369 and 4,730 completions, with an expectation of spending some $36 billion. Mr. President, the National Housing Trust, in terms of its infrastructure upgrade, is going to pursue upgrades in many parishes: St. Elizabeth, Westmoreland, St. James, St. Anne, St. Mary, Portland, Kingston, and St. Andrew. You know, ironically, when the Prime Minister was announcing where these allocations and these upgrades were made, I saw members of Parliament, when he was calling out where, they were like saying, so where is mine? And it's a great expectation. On both sides. But the housing solutions is critical for our development. Of course. Mr. President, one of the key areas, however, in terms of not only the housing start and the completions, but one of the key changes, Mr. President, are those changes to revise the income band with the applicable interest rate. So what it means to a mortgager, what it means to a worker, it means that you are creating an opportunity for a contributor. It also means that once you revise the income band and reduction in the interest rate for a borrower, it creates disposable income. Because once your interest rate goes down, depending on your earnings, where the contribution savings between 3,600 and 10,276,000 monthly. What it means, is disposable income, money in a pocket, money in a purse, money in a wallet. Very important, Mr. President, for the working class. And I commend the National Housing Trust. Mr. President, I had indicated that in my presentation. I want to speak on some areas that the leader of opposition made reference to in his presentation. And one that would normally and naturally jump out at me is when he spoke about contract work. And he said, one of the areas where the inequity is most stark in the situation with the workers of the country, the widespread practice of substituting full-time employment that comes with real benefits with so-called contract labor, which comes with none, deepens the inequity in our society. That I agree. He said, we all know the situation which exists in the relation to the government service. And he said, like hospital and ancillary workers, porters, security sector, and security guards. But then he said, some of the so-called contract workers have been employed up to 5 years or more, according to some reports. And he went on that I want to quote the following observation from an officer of the Bustamante Industrial Trade Union. All right. So your leader is taking eyes from the BITU. He said, contract work doesn't make sense. Contract work is only supposed to be when they have a short-term project doing. So nobody working in an hotel as a security guard unless you plan to close down the company tomorrow, not supported to be work on contract. Mr. President, contract work, how it is promoted in this country, is exposing thousands of workers to an abuse, to the precarious nature of employment. Thousands of workers are exposed to fixed-term employees whilst operating in permanent roles. Many of these employees are denied benefits because of their precarious nature of employment. And it is rampant in the security industry. It is rampant in another growth industry, the tourism sector. And so as a country, those employees must feel safe and secure, and that they have a reasonable expectation for renewal of contract. I want to outline something to this Senate. I want to outline something. So here is a worker. Here is a worker looking for a job. Finally get the job. And gets the letter that suggests, dear such and such, I am to inform you that approval has been granted for your employment as account officer as at April 1, 2019. It outlines the basic salary, and then it outlines the leave entitlement. Now here's my concern. The next part of the letter says, you will be required to pay the relevant statutory deductions and contributions like National Insurance Scheme and National Housing Trust at the rate forced from time to time. So, what it is saying to that worker in the public sector is that the worker work Monday to Friday, Some exigence of the job don't allow that worker to even have lunch or take a break. But that worker is required, based on this stipulation, to go pay them contribution to the National Housing Trust and the NIS. No. No, let's deal with something. Let's deal with something a little bit, Mr. President. Out of a labor force of 1.23 million, the density of contribution of the National Housing Trust is 450,000 and is a similar amount NIS. So that tells us, Mr. President, how much money is being lost by the state by the lack of this contribution that could have enhanced this appropriation bill. We are losing money based on our employment practice. And the people, these workers, will not be able to get the required benefit. We are exposing them and we must fix it. One of the things that we must do first. So if we're going to promote a change and to protect these workers, it must start, Mr. President, with the state. It must start with the state. Mr. President, I won't tell you his where, but you'll be surprised if I tell you. President, the leader of opposition, also in his presentation, sir, he said, Wholeness Administration, had it been so minded, could have initiated some action on this front by dealing with the issues revealed in the Labor Reform Commission's report. And it's almost 2 years now since the report was released and nothing has been done. So he said, Prime Minister, it's time to dust it off. Well, I have a copy of it. And Senator Brown, there's no dust on it. There is no dust on it. Now, we have to be, there's a process in dealing with a report coming out of a commission. I'm not finding no excuse, but let's understand the process. Because it went to Cabinet, it went to the Partnership of Jamaica discussions. There are some 38 wide-ranging recommendations. And some of these recommendations have to be treated within short-term, medium-term, and long-term. And some of them, there are recommendations that I don't know if we find favor. Right now, it is before the Labor Advisory Committee for review and determination and to affix when and how. So there is a process. But it wasn't lying somewhere. And you know, no, it wasn't lying somewhere. But there's a process. And we have to deal with that process. So there's no dust on it. Advise your leader that it is going through a proper process. Mr. President, as a country, in the scheme of things, there are some benefits in areas and sectors, but in future, the workers in this country have made sacrifices. And we have placed this country now to where there's a vision on a road to prosperity. There is comfort in economic independence. The workers, the working class expect something, and I want to suggest that in future the minister must consider. And you and I would have raised it, Senator Brown. revising the taxation that impacts on workers. I mean, you have uniform, but it's not yours, but you pay this taxation. You have meal allowance that when you get it, it's taxed, and you get the money and you spend it, and there's another taxation. So we have to review things like those. We're promoting efficiency and a move in productivity. And we must start looking at whether or not any company and its workers who come forward with a productivity plan, whether or not you want to tax it. Because if we are promoting efficiency and productivity, we must take away the barriers.
I agree with that.
Mr. President, when I sat on that side, and I have no intention of going on that side, it was no time. But when I sat on that side, I argued in this parliament of a group of workers that I represent in the finance sector for the tax on concessionary loans. Yes, your leader obliged when he was minister. Now, that revision brought down the rates to 9%. No. Interest rate has gone way below that. What I'm calling for is an abolition of that regime. It is no longer a benefit. And I have written to the minister about that. So I intend to pursue it. Mr. President, the work must continue. We must continue the fiscal discipline. We must continue to create innovative solutions. We must continue to pursue the economic independence. We must accelerate our thrust towards greater efficiency and productivity. We must continue to promote growth mixed with equity. Yes. Mr. President, we must continue to the protection of the vulnerable and the poor. We must continue our growth in employment. We have reduced the unemployment level to a historic proportions. Mr. President, Jamaica is moving in the right direction. We are experiencing a period of great economic opportunity. And I want to say this in closing. There will be distractions. There will be obstacles. There will be challenges. When these things come about, we must take decisive decisions. The most difficult roads leads to the most beautiful destinations. True. Let us pursue the journey of prosperity. Please you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Gill. Senator Brown.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Hold on a minute, Senator Brown. Mm-hmm. Senator Brown.
Then, given the time, and I take it I have permission to speak from a seat other than my own, is it possible for us to take the 120 resolution now so that I'm not broken 3 minutes into the speech? Okay. Not? Mr. President, so that I am not broken in. No. I will just start, Mr. President, by commenting on some things my friend said, so I can kill that trick. The call Senator Gill for pension reform would feel better if we get the leader of government business in the Senate to put on the agenda resolution number 4 on the other paper, standing under my name, calling for debate and pension, encouraging us to get the society to expand the number of people in pension scheme. It's before the Senate. It's on the agenda. I urge you to get your leader to deal with it, and deal with it urgently. Not because I moved the resolution. Let's bring it. Let's bring it on. It's there. Stop ignoring it. Second thing you said, my friend, was about contract work. You have passed a resolution in the Senate. I have passed a resolution in the Senate. There's a joint position, I hope, across the aisles on contract work. Let us do it. The United Kingdom have passed laws to protect those workers. Zambia, South Africa, Australia, it can be done. And I give the assurance on behalf of the shadow cabinet of the People's National Party that we are going to bring a law to protect contract workers. A law that will be model of best practice abroad. But I give that assurance. We are going to do it. We are going to do it. Thank you. The unemployment. Sometimes I hear, Mr. President, highest number of people employed. I know the labor force survey, I know it is made up and all of that. It's always good to say it's reducing. I don't challenge the methodology, Senator Hill. I know it. But it's not that every day everybody who is listed as employed goes out to work. Because if you only work for 1 week during the period of the survey, you're called employed. So let us acknowledge progress, because it has been going down since 2013. But let us not boast as if Tom and John and Harry and Mary and Kenisha and Tanisha not still without a job. However, things like underemployment. So let us not boast too much on this. Let us recognize progress continues to be made. I thought I'd get you to that point, Mr. President.
Mr. President, the time being 1:20 p.m., we ask that we be permitted to sit beyond 1:30 p.m. to complete the business of the day.
Yes, thank you. And just as an aside, I intend to have the committee reviewing the standing orders to start meeting again, so we can come to some definitive arrangement with this 120 issue, and also the issue perhaps of taking a break around lunchtime. So, but that's in the immediate future, Madam, so you can stand by to name your members to the committee. The question is that the Senate sits beyond 120 to complete the business of the day. Those in favor? Senator Butler.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now I can go to my presentation. I was just biding the 3 minutes. Only that. Mr. President, I rise to contribute to this debate on a bill to fund the budget of Jamaica for the financial year 2019-2020. It's called the Appropriation Bill. But sadly, Mr. President, it is too easy for some government officials and public servants to misappropriate the people's money. The taxpayers' money must not be misappropriated. And those who do so must face the ultimate sanction of imprisonment. Somebody must go to prison, and they must know that if they take the people's money, it's workhouse them will go. So, Mr. President, I want to say to my friend Senator Charles, acting as leader today, I hope I did not hear you right when you say a certain senator could return soon. I really hope you didn't mean it when you paid tribute earlier. I hope you didn't mean it. I say it again, I hope you never mean it. Because you're pretending as if you don't know what other people know, but sufficient to the rest of my presentation. Mr. President, names like L.L. Simmons, former Minister of Education, Joseph Malcolm, former Minister of Education, Cleve Puss Lewis, and G. Smith, Jack Smith, comes to mind as parliamentarians who have been convicted for breaking the laws of Jamaica. So it's not strange for parliamentarians to go to prison if they misappropriate or act wrongfully relative to the laws of Jamaica. Jack Smith, former Minister of Labour, was the last one convicted of misappropriating farm workers' money. He should not be the last one in our history to walk through the gates of the General Penitentiary or the District Prison in Spanish Town. Whoever, on whichever side, put their sticky fingers on taxpayers' money must end up in prison. The case must be built and the conviction secured and the punishment meted out. Mr. President, chapter 8, verses 36 to 37 of the Gospel of Mark asks a question. Senator, make sure I get this right, you have to be my guide here. For what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? That is the same question I ask when I look at the government side of the Senate and realize you're one short today. What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his own soul? See, Mr. President, I've said it over and over in the Senate. Character matters. Character matters. I've asked a number of questions in the Senate from time to time. Oftentimes it takes a long time for those questions to be answered. When the answers come back, they're often inaccurate, to say the least. The answer to the last set of questions I asked provoked me to declare on the floor of the Senate that the minister was lying. I said it here. It gave me no pleasure to say so. But I know when I asked about the consultants, the results I got wasn't truthful. I know when I asked about the overseas trips of the Prime Minister and those accompanying, the answers weren't truthful. I knew, Mr. President, you and the Speaker went to Cuba to President Castro's funeral, but it never came in the answer. I didn't know anything about it. I know that the negotiations completed from last year and the Public Sector Monitoring Committee. But I got an answer that really provoked me to point out that the minister was lying to the Senate. It gave me no pleasure, none whatsoever. Many didn't like what I said then, but I know that the truth may be an offense, but it is not a sin. Sadly, those in society who practice to tell little lies usually end up being caught in big lies. Those who practice to tell little lies usually end up being caught in big lies. Let that, I hope, be a lesson to all of us in the Senate, all of us in the other place, and let it be a lesson for the broader society. Let us speak the truth, cost it what it will. Little lies lead to big lies. And today you're one shot. Mr. President, Dr. Peter Phillips and Mr. Mark Golding, the other, went through the budget. They did well. They were brilliant, and the opposition is proud of them. We will not, Senator Charles, repeat what they said here. We adapt what they said. So we're not going to repeat it. We're not going to sing Santa Claus either. No, I can't sing, so let me make that clear. But what I'm going to do today in this presentation, Mr. President, is ask some questions for which the people of Jamaica require some answer. I'm going to start with a simple one. How can someone who is on bail, awaiting trial for murder, continue to be the head of a government board? How can that be? More so a school board. More so a school board. A school board for which the teachers have been protesting. How can it be? Somebody charged with murder and bail on murder, not only chairing a school board, taking day-to-day charge of the school. I call upon whoever is the minister acting now of education to change that. Second issue I want to raise, that the people out there want answer to, and they asked me to raise it in this debate on the appropriation bill, is there's a primary school in East Portland, Fair Prospect, and Senator Samuel, you may be aware of it. $11 million was given last year, March, by the Japanese government to build 2 classrooms to move the children out of chichi-infested place. It was given outside of the Member of Parliament. He was involved. It was, and check was handed over to in the presence of a political activist who is now the candidate out there. I want to know what has happened to that 11. You want to talk? Are you going to allow me to talk?
I'll just give you the answer.
I don't need no answer from you now. I am talking. When I don't talk, that's the answer when you come to speak. But I want to know about the $11 million. I want to know how you can start build a classroom without permission from the parish council. So what happened to that money in East Portland? The $11 million given by the Japanese for the Fair Prospect Primary School. No, don't matter.
Point of order. Because you mentioned about starting to build the classrooms. What has taken place is it's a point of order, so I'm giving the clarification because you're misleading. It is a misleading assertion.
1 minute, just 1 minute.
Fair.
You're making a point of order.
Yes, sir. The point of order is that that statement is misleading because the rooms have not started to be built. The old rooms that are in the place have been demolished. We are awaiting parish council permission to do the construction that is necessary. The money is housed at the Ministry of Education.
Senator, thank you, Senator Samuel.
No, don't tell the people in East Portland what happened to the 11 million. And why you never bring the Member of Parliament involved? Why you go around the Member of Parliament to some caretaker? That's the type of corruption that is hurting the country. And I make that very clear. But there are some other questions that people want answers to, Mr. President. They want to know whether the 50th birthday of the Minister of Education, former Minister of Education, was hosted on a yacht in Port Royal by the Caribbean Maritime University. And if so, what were the costs of these parties? We hear Wakanda party, we hear Topsy-Turvy Cake party, now we hear about yacht in Port Royal for Minister Ruel Reid's 50th birthday? What's the story with that? What's the cost of those parties? Who paid for them? Third, this would be a question the people out there asked me to raise in the Senate. Are there relatives of the former minister and staff at CMU? When were these persons hired, and what are the qualifications for the position that they're in? The people want to know. They don't just want to hear about allegations in public domain. Fifth question I want the people want to answer to are there any personal staff members of the former minister being paid by CMU that is funded by this budget, or any entity associated with the Caribbean Maritime University, or any personal staff of the minister being paid by them? People want to know also, Mr. President, are there any spouses of Jamaica Labour Party members of Parliament employed at the Ministry of Education or any agency that reports to the Ministry of Education? And if that is so, what was the process of hiring of them? Because other people want jobs too. Mr. President, the people out there want to know the number of consultants stroke advisors working at the Caribbean Maritime University. What are their specific responsibility? And above all, what is their remuneration? How much them get? People out there, Mr. President, want to know what are the specific responsibility or tasks that former JLP MP Othniel Lawrence performed as an advisor to the CMU president. Is it a mere coincidence that this engagement at CMU was at the same time as Mr. Ruel Reid's announcement for Northwest St. Anne, a seat Mr. Lawrence aspired to represent? The people want to know. The people want to know, Mr. President, is the manager for donor relations at the National Education Trust contracted to both the Caribbean Maritime University and the Ministry of Education at the same time? And whether or not salary is being paid from both locations. But the people want to know. If it's not so, it's not so. But the people want to know. The secrecy must end. The people want to know what procurement guidelines were utilized in the awarding of contracts to the CMU for the construction and refurbishment of some schools. Example, in Discovery Bay being upgraded to a high school, and Brownstown receiving a new block. New Forest in St. Elizabeth receiving a new block. What are the procurement rules followed? People want to know, were any resources of the CMU deployed to support Ruel Reid candidacy in Northwest St. Anne, especially where any of the unmarked CMU buses used for partisan political purpose? People want to know, were any resources of the CMU diverted to support the construction of a home of a senior CMU in the eastern end of the island? The people want to know these things. Because you see, Senator Charles, what are we looking at here? The new Jamaica is mired in corruption. The new Jamaica stinks to high heaven with the corruption that is happening in the country now. It's happening in your government, and it will appear happened by those even in this very Senate. So, Mr. President, those issues I hope at some point the people will get answers to. In this budget, allocation is made under head 9,000 to the Integrity Commission, the National Integrity Commission. This Parliament recently merged a number of anti-corruption agencies into the super national commission. The aim was to cauterize corruption in government. So as we fund this commission, we need to ask ourselves, and you're right, Senator Gill, let us evaluate. Are we spending taxpayers' money wisely? Are we cauterizing the corruption that we want to turn our backs on? And in doing that, Mr. President, let me pause and congratulate and commend the Auditor General for the excellent job she and her team have done. Wonderful job. Probably under-resourced. Audited or unaudited, they've been doing a wonderful job. You know, Mr. Given, let me put it this way, with the current Integrity Commission, as currently structured and resourced, discover the allegations in the public domain that led the Prime Minister to fire forthwith the Minister of Education, Youth and Information. Because it must be a good reason that a Prime Minister who says he has to investigate first. That's what he said at Petrojam before he could fire the minister. And you can't just rush to judgment. For the Prime Minister to rush to take action, in this case, he must know something. He must know something. And it's not the first time ministers have resigned or been terminated. So don't go and tell me about how great a Prime Minister is because this has happened. I could give you some of the other cases, but don't. So I ask the question, the Integrity Commission, would it be able to ferret out that information as presently structured and resourced? Would the Integrity Commission, as currently structured and resourced, discover the birthday gift of a four-tiered, topsy-turvy, chocolate birthday cake valued at $1,000 US given to a minister of government? Because gifts are part of what has to be reported to the Integrity Commission. But currently how it is structured, would they be able to detect that? So there's another act gone out there, undetected. And President, we call the Wakanda Party, the famous Wakanda Party. Would the Integrity Commission, currently structured and resourced, be able to detect that $1 million of gift to the minister? Because that ought to be reported to the Integrity Commission. And I fear that that wouldn't be so. Would the Integrity Commission, currently structured, as it's currently structured and resourced, be able to detect gifts given to electoral candidates by private contractors, as we've seen in Portland? They're giving free road work and paying people to do it. That's a gift. That's a campaign donation. But are we able to, with the current resource under Ed 9,000, be able to detect these things? If the answer is no, because these are all acts of corruption, which seems to be going undetected by the Integrity Commission, we have to ask ourselves, how do we address this? Not just pouring more money, $600, almost $700 million into this commission. You know, Mr. President, I'm the Integrity Commission. I'm just raising the question, are they able to do the things that they need to do? But when I listen to the Chone speech, which outlines the policy of the government for the year, there was not even a single mention in that Chone speech of the word corruption. Not a single corruption measure was announced in the Chone speech. That's bad. That's sad. And this at a time, as I said in January, in my State of the Nation contribution, that the nation is mired in corruption. The nation is mad in corruption. A single anti-corruption measure announced in the throne speech and is reflected in the budget. Mr. President, the opposition has said the cancer of corruption has engulfed the entire Holness administration. I adopt fully that comment. The cancer of corruption has engulfed the entire Holness administration. I want to commend Dr. Peter Phillips, the leader of the opposition, for boldly raising the issue of corruption at the Ministry of Education. In so doing, he has forced the Prime Minister to fire the Minister of Education, and he deserves our commendation. There are those who want to say the Prime Minister acted quickly. The real issue is, when did the Prime Minister know about this? Did he know about the police taking in the helper? Because there's a lot more that the people outside there knows. So the question is, when did the Prime Minister know about this? Was he late for his budget presentation last Tuesday because he had to be spending time out in that fire at Jamaica House over the Royal Reed issue because he came for after 3 o'clock, or for 3 o'clock instead of 2 o'clock? So if he knew that, then why in his budget speech he never mentioned that minister gone, minister going? So don't tell me about act quickly. He knew before. What has he done? And as we debate this budget, I commend Dr. Phillips on the courage and creativity in constructing the economic platform on which this budget rests. Because having picked up 14 consecutive quarters of negative growth, having picked up a high debt to GDP ratio, having picked up a failed IMF program, he had to stable the ship. He had to prevent the MAX, 737 MAX 8, from crashing. I hope you don't make it crash again. That's the new Jamaica we want. A new Jamaica that must give Dr. Phillips credit for what he did in steering down the IMF and steering down those who were critics who said, all you do is pass the IMF test. I'm glad that you all now realize that without passing the IMF test, there could be no Santa Claus. Mr. President, I've raised the issue of the Integrity Commission as the structure and resources not able to capture and cauterize the corruption. And therefore, we still call for urgent review of the Integrity Commission Act. That act needs to be reviewed, given the relative inactivity and more so their silence and critical investigation. I believe we need to look back at the legislation quicker than we intended and make the adjustment. Be balanced in respect to the silence clause, but it can't be total silence. So I've been calling for a review, an urgent review of the Integrity Commission Act to fix the weakness that has allowed people to call it the silent commission. Don't want a silent commission. I want an active commission because we're engulfed in the cancer of corruption. Cancer of corruption engulfs us. Maybe too we should go back to the separate agencies, because when we had the separate agencies, at least the Office of the Director General was producing reports on its activity and exposing acts of corruption. Those who wanted the super agency need to tell me why it's not working. Is it a lack of money? Because it's really not working, not serving our purpose. Mr. President, so bad is the performance of this agency now that I have to ask, how can it be that after more than 2 years of investigating the sale of youth lands in Ocherios, the Integrity Commission cannot provide this parliament with a report. How can it be? How can it be that after 2 years we can't get a report? Is it a lack of budgetary resource that is causing this? Because if it is, let us vote more in this budget for the Integrity Commission. If it is not money, then the country needs to be told what is holding up this report. Is it that this report is too damning of the government? Is it because this report is too damning of the government? I say release the report and let the chips fall where they may. Mr. President, background to this UDC land sale. Assets belonging to the taxpayers of Jamaica. We don't have to go far. In an article entitled Minister Question in OCG Probe of Rooms on the Beach Sale. Article June 10, 2017. Senator Brown, you know that this is one of my favorite articles because the people are entitled to information. In that article, Mr. President, it says, this is June 10, 2017. The Office of the Contractor General, OCG, is probing the government's sale of a prized beachfront property in Ocherios, St. Anne's, allegedly without due regard to valuation reports. The article continues. The extent of the disregard for the valuation reports at the UDC owned rooms on the beach is not known. The contractor Durkaris, who yesterday confirmed the investigation, refused to give any specific detail. This is 2017. He over said, I can confirm that at least one cabinet minister has been questioned. But at this time, I wouldn't be able to say who the minister is. 2 years ago? And they can't tell us who the minister is? Harrison said a report should be expected very shortly, in quotation, very shortly, because we are almost at the end of the probe. That's June.
It requires action.
That's June 2017. I keep coming here and asking for that report week after week after week. The article continues and says, Audrey Sewell, she was then at the ministry, then she left. Permanent Secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister, where both the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation and the UDC fall, said she could not comment on the matter given the OCG probe. Article continues. The ministry is headed by Prime Minister Andrew Holness and includes Dr. Horace Strong and Darrell Vaz, all ministers without portfolio. Vaz has responsibility for investment. Article continues. Speaking in the Senate on June 2nd, opposition member raised question about the land valuation process and whether Jamaica is getting value for money. At least I'm consistent. The government recently sold a major property in Ocherios, I said, but the public country, the real owners of that property, do not know how much the property was sold for. They have not yet even been told how much the property was valued for, or whether the people got a good deal. What we're hearing is that a minister of government got involved directly in the negotiations. The article continues, the UDC chairman and government Senator Ransford Bram present at the sitting, but did not address the issue when he spoke after Brown. Why, my friend? No, don't answer me. You are a good man. But not everybody who touched this have been good people. You are a good man. I know you, this is not your doing. It is not clear whether the minister...
Mr. President, the Speaker's time has we ask that he be afforded sufficient time to complete his presentation.
Those in favor? Senator Brown.
Thank you, Minister Charles. Mr. President, I'm on the UDC land sales. And I said, the article continues, it is not clear whether the minister accused of meddling was among those questioned by the Contractor General. And then it's closed by saying, the UDC has not responded to Gleaner questions sent from April 2017 regarding the sale. What could there be that is so good about the sale that you want to keep it secret? That you don't want daylight and sunshine to show on it? Why? Why? I could have asked whether any board member resigned at or around the time of this. Because you know I know a lot. Mr. President, that was 2017. That was 2 years ago. Today I asked in the Senate, was Minister Darrell Vaz the minister who was questioned by the Office of the Contractor General? Time for the people to know that. The country must know which minister meddled in the affair. Was it Minister Darrell Vaz? Most of them can just call me Wagga Wagga, as he has done. I don't fear that. Thank you, but he has done it and nobody has come. The media hasn't come in. But when young Damien Crawford says something, everybody run down on him. Everybody run down on Damien. But when he called me Wagga Wagga from a political platform, you was there in Montego Bay, right? So for somehow it's okay to call other people Wagga Wagga, but somebody can't call somebody mistress. What a strange word.
Senator Brown, you're doing very well, and I'm very impressed with the presentation.
I thank you for that, including that part, because I am one who is clear. Jamaica has 14 parishes. Am I correct? Is that what you're told in school? 14 parishes? So, Mr. President, after 2 years, this report, Senator Bryan, must be ready. I am confident that the former Contractor General would have completed this report by now. I have good reasons to believe that this report will be damning. The law requires. You want me to stop for point of order? Because this part I know is burning, you know. Not you, it's burning. So if you want a point of order, I'll break so you can have it. The law requires that the minister with responsibility for the UDC and anyone who may be adversely impacted by the report be provided with a copy of the report.
Mr. President, I'm going to raise a point of order. And I refer to Rule 35.3, which speaks to it shall be out of order to attempt to revive in any debate, a matter, or reconsidering a specific question upon which the Senate has come to a conclusion during the current session. The issue that my friend is speaking about on the report from the Integrity Commission relating to the UDC sale is something that you had already dealt with earlier, and you had made a directive to the clerk of the House in relation to a letter being sent with the Hansard on that particular issue. So I believe the comments that my friend on the road that is going down is in breach of Rule 35.3.
I think that Senator Brown was just about to finish on that area anyway, so I'm going to allow him to complete it.
Mr. President, I passed beyond the issue of the report coming here. I'm going to ask some questions that the law allows for ask. The law requires that the minister with responsibility for the UDC and anyone who may be adversely impacted by the report be provided with a copy. My question is, has the Prime Minister been given a copy of this report? He's in charge of the UDC. And I have to ask this question in light of what happened on Wednesday morning Will he fire the minister the same way he fired Minister Ruel Reid if he finds the report damning? Or will this be a case of what the people call, Mr. President, puss and dog, have the same look? Will he be treated like Wheatley?
Senator Brown, come now, man.
Mr. President, I'm making this presentation. You never tell nobody else to come on. Leave me alone, make my presentation, sir. My question is, I've asked about the Prime Minister. We know that Petrojam needed investigation first, and still no firing of the minister. Again, I ask, will the Prime Minister, if corruption or abuse of authority is revealed in this overdue report from the Integrity Commission, fire the minister? As a member of the Senate, appointed in accordance with the Constitution of Jamaica, I respectfully and humbly call on the commissioners. I respectfully and humbly call on the commissioners of the Integrity Commission to urgently deliver the report to the Parliament so it can be tabled at the soonest possible time. I know the report is ready. Commissioners, the House meets next Tuesday. The House meets next Tuesday. I beseech the Integrity Commission to do your job and remove the blinkers from the eyes of the Jamaican people. If the minister who was questioned is exonerated, let that be. Similarly, if corruption is discovered, let us see the Prime Minister act with rural-like speed and fire that minister too. You agree with me?
Mr. President, I again, I'm listening to my friend. But what I want to, what I think that the aspersions and a breach of procedure is being cast on the Integrity Commission by the comments made by Senator Brown, because it is a commission that has a duty to report to Parliament. But his comments is indicating that there is some report outside of Parliament that is being given to him.
Senator Brown, just, can I ask you to please complete the presentation without getting into the... That's not a point of order, but just...
I knew it wasn't.
You understand what the member is saying. You understand exactly what the member is saying.
Mr. President.
And personally, for my point, I wouldn't take the point of order. Allow you to continue your presentation.
Because I was moving on to another point now. But I understand how it bond them. But no. But the corruption that is being exposed. I know, so that's why I should shut your mouth.
Senator Brown. Senator Brown. Senator Charles, no. Have a seat, please. Have a seat, please. Senator Brown, would you just withdraw the statement about shut? Just withdraw it, please.
No, that yes. I am going to withdraw it.
Just withdraw it, man.
I withdraw the shut your mouth thing. But if he opens unnecessarily, I will tell him again.
To be honest with you, I don't even find that funny, We have to maintain a bit of decorum. Just go through. So you withdraw the shut your mouth bit. Just move on, man.
Thank you, if you give me the permission to. Mr. President, after much delay, I'm coming to the section Integrity Commission Annual Reports. After much delay, the Office of the Prime Minister released to the Parliament copies of the annual reports of the Commission. One former member of the Senate and a former member of the House, who were reported as being delinquent, have publicly stated that they have cleared all outstanding issues. I commend them. However, it appears that one of the 4 parliamentary leaders who receive information on parliamentarians is himself accused of not completing his